It's gonna be good. Last entry was a little disturbing.
Aren't you that horny guy who's pretending to be a big bird, checking out that beautiful mom?
Yes, I am.
Now you're gonna see what a big horny bird actually looks like. In hell.
I'm glad to be joined here by members of this administration who are active in child support enforcement and by advocates of tougher child support enforcement. Today, the executive order I have just signed is another important step in our efforts to bring the federal government in line with the basic values of ordinary Americans. People who bear children and bring them into this world have an absolute responsibility to do their best to take care of them. And any parent who isn't paying child support should be required to pay. The action I'm taking today builds on the work we've been doing for the last 2 years to step up child support enforcement. Just last week, the Department of Health and Human Services reported that we collected a record $703 million in delinquent child support enforcement in 1993 by garnishing income tax returns of parents who failed to pay. That is a 13% increase in child support collection. It helped almost 1 million families. The executive order I just signed will make the federal government a model employer in the area of child support enforcement. It will make it easier for us to find federal employees who don't meet their obligations to their children. It will speed up our ability to garnish wages and force them to pay the child support they owe. Any parent who is avoiding his or her child support should listen carefully. We will find you, we will catch you, we will make you pay. Children should not suffer for their parents' mistakes. Too many children in this country do suffer because of their parents' irresponsible behavior. We can't let them be punished any longer. When parents don't provide the child support they owe, their children pay forever, and in more ways than financial. The toughest enforcement measures ever proposed for child support were part of the welfare reform legislation I sent to the Congress last year. Our plan said to absent parents, if you're not paying your child support, we'll garnish your wages, suspend your license, track you across state lines, and if necessary, require you to work off what you owe. Child support enforcement is essential to the welfare reform effort, and Congress should include these tough child support enforcement measures in the proposed welfare reform legislation. We should be tough on deadbeat parents, not on innocent children. Again, I thank all the people who helped to put together this child support enforcement order. We will proceed to aggressively. I think it's close though. I've talked to all the other sides. As far as to the best of my knowledge, I've talked to several. I think I should let him speak for himself. I think it depends upon what those undecided senators believe is the right thing to do.
Are you going to be meeting with any of them today or tomorrow? Because one will be going to try and head this thing on.
I'm not sure. I've had extensive conversations with all of them. I don't know what else to do.
Well, how are you going to celebrate Chelsea's birthday? Just a little offbeat.
Well, we're going to have a dinner tonight. You know, it's a school day. You don't get your birthday off at school. So.
And you're not going to be a deadbeat father.
I got up this morning and we had a nice visit this morning for her birthday. But we're gonna have a dinner. We're gonna have a family dinner tonight to celebrate her birthday, and then after the press of her school activities clears, we'll probably have a little party for her. But she didn't want one.
There is a teenager in the White House.
Well, I think she's doing very well. She's doing good. Thank you very much.
Does that protect?
When C-SPAN came in here and did the interview with the president stuff, I gave you that, and I liked it a lot. And I met the people who played Lincoln and Douglas in the jails for Illinois State when we were out there. So I just liked it. I thought it looked good on the desk. Besides that, it reminds me that this town has always been about arguing.
Case workers and social workers are often guilty of fraud. They withhold and destroy evidence, and they seek wrongly to terminate parental rights while being protected by state immunity. There is a huge bureaucracy made up of judges, court-appointed attorneys, guardian ad litem, social workers, state employees, court investigators, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, foster parents, adoptive parents, and on, who are looking to the children in state care for their job security. Judges have control over private living arrangements and income of 48.3 million Americans. The United States Census Bureau reported in 2002 that $40 billion in transfer payments were made between households of custody parents and other parents. That money, $40 billion, is under the direction and control of family court judges in environments covered with confidentiality laws that protect the wrong people. Fathers are victims of this unjust system. Child support payments, even without having visits with their children, are choking the very life out of fathers. 3 fathers, of whom I am aware and have been in touch with, committed suicide in the last 12 months because they lost the opportunity to even visit with their children. These are crimes against humanity for financial gain. Rights are removed from parents. Human rights, civil rights, and even religious rights.
To all of you. I have served in the Georgia State Senate for 4 years. One of my greatest pleasures, other than my sonogram bill, was getting the resolution passed to stop the North American Union. However, for 4 years, I have been confronted with families struggling to remove their children from the clutches of Child Protective Services. I wrote a scathing report last year on the corruption in Child Protective Services, and an update and copies are out on the table. During the last session of the Georgia General Assembly, I introduced Senate Bill 415 relating to juvenile proceedings, and copies of that bill are attached to the report on the tables. The bill 415 called for the time allotted for the Department of Human Resources to provide emergency care to a child without a court order to be reduced from 7 days to 72 hours. It required a court order to enter the residence of a parent or guardian to seize a child. It called for family court to be open to the public. Confidentiality and secrecy in family court protects the wrong people. It provided that immunity in the system shall not extend to the seizures of children that are found to be in violation. nor to the administration of medication to a child over the objection of the parent or custodian, and it provided the state from applying for obtaining, receiving, or accepting adoption incentive payments under the Federal Adoption and Safe Families Act of 1997. The Department of Child Protective Services has become a protected empire built on taking children and separating families. This is not to say that there are not those children who do need to be removed from wretched situations and need protection. However, my report is concerned with the children and parents caught up in legal kidnapping. Having worked with probably 300 cases statewide and hundreds across the country, and in nearly every state, I am convinced there is no accountability in Child Protective Services. I have come to several conclusions. 2 or 3 are: 1, that poor parents, not always, but oftentimes, are targeted to lose their children because they do not have the wherewithal to hire an attorney and fight the system. That caseworkers and social workers are very often guilty of fraud. They withhold and destroy evidence. They fabricate evidence, and they seek to terminate parental rights unnecessarily. That the separation of families and the snatching of children is growing as the business grows because state and local governments have grown accustomed to having these taxpayer dollars to balance their ever-growing budgets. That the bureaucracy is huge. Look at who is getting paid. State employees, attorneys, court investigators, guardian ad litems, court personnel and judges. There are psychologists, therapists, psychiatrists, counselors, foster parents, adoptive parents, and on. All are looking to the children in state custody to provide job security. That the Adoption and Safe Families Act set in motion first in 1974 by Walter Mondale and later in 1997 by President Bill Clinton offered cash bonuses to the states for every child they adopted out of foster care. In order to receive the adoption incentive bonuses, local child protective services would need more children. They must have merchandise that sells, and they must have plenty so the buyer can choose. Some counties often offer $4,000 to $6,000 bonus for each child adopted out to strangers, and an additional $2,000 for a special needs child. Employees work to keep the federal dollars flowing. But that is only the beginning figure in the formula in which each bonus is multiplied by the percentage that the state has managed to exceed its baseline adoption number. Therefore, states and local communities work hard to reach their goals for increased numbers of adoptions for children in foster care. As you can see, this program is offered from the very top and is run by Health and Human Resources. This is why victims in Child Protective Services get no help from their legislators. It explains why my bill, Senate 415, suffered such defeat in the Judicial Committee, and why I was cut off at every juncture, and why I was defeated myself last month for my re-election by another Republican. That tax dollars are being used to keep this gigantic system afloat. Many grandparents have called me to get custody of their grandparents before being lost in the system. Grandparents who lose their grandchildren to strangers have lost their own flesh and blood. The children lose their family heritage, and grandparents, and parents too, lose the connection of their heirs. And that the National Center on Child Abuse and Neglect in 1998 reported that 6 times more children died in foster care than in the general public, and that once removed to official safety, these children are far more likely to suffer abuse, including sexual molestation, than in the general population. Think what that number is today, 10 years later. Here are a couple of the recommendations on my list. Call for an independent audit of all state child protective services and for a federal congressional hearing on child protective services. Abolish the federal and state financial incentives that have turned child protective services into a business that separates families for money. I have witnessed such injustice and harm brought to so many families that I am not sure if reform of the system is even possible. The system cannot be trusted. It does not serve the people. It obliterates families and children simply because it has the power to do so. What I have said to you in these few minutes is that we must confront the fraud in Child Protective Services. Child Protective Services seizes children using the very system that is paid for by the taxpayer, who actually believes it is used to protect abused and neglected children. The bureaucracy of workers benefit financially by a system that converts children into cash while destroying their families and their lives. No child who emerges from the system can ever be sound or whole. Many disappear and never are ever heard from again. God will not stand for what is happening to our children and our families. His heart beats for these children. He will lift up the downtrodden. What is happening in America regarding Child Protective Services is a criminal political phenomenon, and it must be brought to an end. Please join me in working to help set our children and our families free.
Glad you're here. Thank you. I'm here today to speak to you in reference to family court. Along with millions of other parents in this state and across the country, I too have personally had the unfortunate privilege of becoming intimately aware of the comings and goings of the family court judiciary. I can attest firsthand that there is not a single article of the United States Constitution that is not routinely violated in family court. It is a court where both I and millions of parents like me, as well as our children, are routinely subjected to egregious violations of our civil rights. I had my 11-month-old baby boy kidnapped and abducted from me by unjustifiable and unconstitutional state intervention, despite the fact that I had never committed or been convicted of any crime or abuse. I was afforded no presumption of innocence, no trial, no chance to face my accusers. The family court commissioner was my judge, jury, and executioner. I was categorically denied due process. So why are family courts throughout this state and this country separating children from perfectly loving, fit, and capable fathers without due process? What's driving all of it? Our government has financially incentivized the kidnapping and trafficking of children for profit through Title 4D of the Social Security Act, otherwise known as child support. Shocked and stupefied are not strong enough terms to describe my state of mind when I found out that the entire judiciary in California, including this council, are under contract with the executive branch agencies to help assist with enforcing Title 4D in exchange for federal incentive funds. Article 3, Section 3 of the California State Constitution states that the powers of state government are legislative, executive, and judicial. Persons charged with the exercise of one power may not exercise either of the others. According to the California Code of Judicial Ethics, a judge needs to uphold the integrity and independence of the judiciary. In what way, shape, or form could any of you sit here with a straight face and maintain that the judiciary is independent or impartial when you've crawled into bed with the executive branch in exchange for money? This is nothing short of state-sponsored abduction and trafficking of our children for profit. Worst of all, this corruption is committed under the guise that it's all done in the best interest of our children. Well, I got a news flash for everyone in this room today. 90% of all homeless and runaway children are from fatherless homes, 32 times the average. 85% of all children who show behavior disorders come from fatherless homes, 20 times the average. 80% of rapists with anger problems come from fatherless homes, 14 times the average. 71% of all high school dropouts come from fatherless homes, 9 times the average. So when the family courts tell us that you're taking our children away from fathers and driving those fathers into poverty through the racketeering and extortion activities of Title 4D, that it's all done in our child's best interest, excuse me when I say I don't know what the hell any of you are talking about. I'd like to leave you guys with a quote. The state must declare the child to be the most precious treasure of the people. As long as the government is perceived as working for the benefit of the children, the people will happily endure almost any curtailment of liberty and almost any deprivation.
And the question that we had from the gentleman in the back, and I was reading it. I'll just give you the first paragraph of House Joint Resolution NN, and it says the joint resolution proposing an amendment to the state constitution of 1963 by adding section 27 to article 1 to declare the fundamental right of parents and legal guardians to direct the care, upbringing, and education of their children. You think, why would we need a resolution saying something like that? You know, it seems like it's kind of a no-brainer. We know that children are parents. Again, I am a former enforcement officer for 37th Circuit Family Court, and I had the Child Support and Custody Division. And I came to the job fresh out of college, well qualified, and I hope to really make a difference in the families of Michigan, children of divorce and separation, to impact their lives in a positive way. However, early on, I realized that it was all about money. And it wasn't about any efforts toward conciliation, or none of these things were allowed in the family justice system. We were out to get the federal and state tax dollars that were allotted for each case enforcement. Our director would say regularly, we aren't the friend of the family, we're the friend of the court. And so we stumbled over ourselves trying to get more Title 4D enforced cases on our records and increase the child support orders, because the federal government granted these generous amounts for each case we enforced. And in the years I worked in the system, I witnessed regular deception to clients that was mandated by office policy. I saw gender bias and discrimination against families of divorce and separation. I saw records disposed of. I saw office policies and rules change from week to week for the profit of the agency, for convenience. I saw hundreds of pleas for parenting time or visitation enforcement get buried because there's no money in enforcing custody or visitation issues. Increasing the child support money that came into our offices was the goal for each of us, and we were secretly rated according to how much money we brought in through asset seizures, income garnishment, scheduling court hearings, and giving out warrants. We actually wrote the orders ourselves, and then we enforced them, and the judge merely rubber stamped them. He was too busy to actually become personally involved in what was going on. He knew that he had a little bit more input, contact with parents. Although my peers and I were, I was a single mom, which was an exception to the rule, but there were a lot of, most of the enforcement and custody officers were unmarried, certainly never divorced or separated, none had children. My director proudly told me that the Child Support Enforcement Agency was the darling of the circuit court, in that we made money for the judge and the court, unlike the sheriff's department and so many other county agencies that cost the county money. We weren't an exception either, because we went from county to county different times, helping others. Kent County was one of them that asked for our input to help maximize their efforts toward increased collection, because we were so successful. We weren't just told to withhold information, forms, policies, laws, and statutes from our clients with questions, but we were forbidden from helping them obtain any legal relief from unfair situations beyond their control. We were instructed to quickly help those who were demanding an increase in their child support, but we were threatened with losing our jobs if we should read a word of encouragement to an injured or unemployed payer to petition for a reduction in any kind. And we were told that we would be convicted of practicing law without a license. So for the years that I worked in the system, I put my job on the line whenever I helped any of the parties in trouble. We were not to get personally involved in the best interest of the children or parents. And any of those of us who did were derisively accused of wasting our time being social workers. Child Protective Services, Family Independence Agencies, they're all the same way. No one wants to improve services or hear about abuses within the system, because every worker in these huge bureaucracies, corporations, are trying to keep his or her job by covering up any errors or problems. And everyone is after everyone else or on their back if you should go out of the status quo. There's a kind of a good old boy mentality in any one of these agencies that you just can't counter easily.
Love his mom. Shortly after my son was born, I went 204 days without seeing my son. At the end of that time, I was relegated to the equivalent of an every other weekend visitor. Shortly after that, I was diagnosed with a pretty large growth in my brain. We didn't know what my future was going to be like. And it dawned on me that at that point, if something were to happen to me, my son's mom would automatically get sole custody. But it also dawned on me if the situation had been reversed, I would have automatically gotten sole custody of the very son that I was already only getting every other weekend. Why would it take the death of a parent to convert from an every other weekend visitor to having full custody of a child? If that's the case, shouldn't both parents have 50-50? As a result of my story being televised on a news station in St. Louis, my story went viral. I think it's been 30 million views or something like that. And I started doing a lot of Facebook Lives. And my reach now is around 3 to 4 million in an average month. This past year I did a tour of 38 cities in 24 states. And this isn't about me at all. This is about a fact that obviously this issue resonates. If we're attracting 3 to 4 million people every single month that are paying attention to this, and as you look behind me at all the people that are affected, this is resonating, and it's the only issue in 30 years that I've been around the political arena that crosses gender lines, crosses racial lines, crosses political lines, crosses socioeconomic lines. It affects everybody, because we already know half of all marriages end in divorce. And for children, they have two traumas that they're dealing with. Trauma one is mom and dad aren't together. They don't know why, but they're very confused because they love both of them. Now add into that confusion, only one of them do they get to see on a regular basis. The other one is relegated as a visitor, which makes one parent in their mind the superior parent and one parent's the inferior parent. Now imagine that to a 7-year-old child or a 5-year-old child that doesn't know how to verbalize this confusion. And we wonder why, when we look at the statistics, between 70 and 94% of violent crime rates, incarceration rates, high school dropouts, behavioral problems, substance abuse problems, can all be tracked to growing up, in many cases without the father, because it's technically gender neutral. I'll fight just as hard for a mother as I will for a father. But the situation can be solved so easy by starting the case with a 50-50. In every other area of law, we start out with a due process that says people are innocent until proven guilty. And yet we walk into a courtroom and one parent is presumed to have the upper hand in most cases. Many of my followers and just about everybody in the room behind me will verify, most people I talk to say, you know what, I didn't have as much animosity for my ex until I met with my first family law attorney. And they told me that, look, in our state, you're probably not going to get 50-50. One of you is going to win, and one of you is going to lose. So unless you want to be the one that loses, you better start digging up dirt to prove why you're the better parent. And that creates this adversarial relationship, and that's why these court cases are drug out for 6 months, 8 months, 10 months a year. That's why, as we just heard, people settle. People aren't settling because they're glad that the arrangement, they're settling because they ran out of money and they don't have an attorney to keep fighting for them. Can you imagine how different it would be if those parents would walk into an attorney and the first words out of that attorney's mouth are, look, in our state, you're probably both going to get 50-50. So you might want to learn how to work together and how to co-parent for the betterment of your child. And now all that money, instead of going to the attorney's college fund, can go to their own college fund for their own kids, instead of having one parent ripped out of that child's life. And so to continue on a path, and not in any way putting down the previous speakers, but to think that we're doing okay with our children across America and in the state of Pennsylvania, that people are settling and everything is fine, is almost like Mr. Magoo driving down the street, thinking that everything's fine while everybody's running off the road behind him because he's cutting them off. That's the situation that we're in right now. So I thank you so much for taking the time to hear this case, but I beg of you, please, for the kids of Pennsylvania, give them a chance to not have one of their parents ripped out of their lives. Thanks so much.
I'm going to show you two instruments of tyranny. The first is a gun, a symbol of force, violence, and destruction. This is not the best instrument of tyranny. This is the type of thing used by tyrants who are stupid, clumsy, and desperate. When the masses are being controlled by this, they can clearly see they must destroy or escape whoever is pointing this at them. The smart tyrants use the other instrument of tyranny. paper. The paper on which is printed the auto registration you must show, the proof of insurance you must show, the tax form that you must file, the permit or license that you must pay for, the application you must fill out. Whether we realize it or not, we only submit to this because we are being threatened by this. What if we knew they did not have this? Would we do this? I wouldn't. When we do this, we are really reacting to this, tyranny. But just as a gun can be pointed in two directions, paper can be used by all parties. How can you use the power of paper? One way is something called an affidavit. An affidavit seems simple and harmless. It's simply a sworn statement of fact signed by a notary. But a lot more people have been robbed with this than with this. A properly executed affidavit is law until it is rebutted by another affidavit. Suppose you send your mortgage lender an affidavit that says you've just discovered that the loan documents they asked you to sign have misrepresentations, lack of disclosure, or fraud. If you are wrong, you may go to jail for perjury. If you're right, you may get the deed to your house free and clear. An affidavit is a powerful thing. The author of an affidavit can take all the marbles. He can make the rules. In my affidavit, I can say, you hereby agree to pay me $50 a month unless you rebut this affidavit within 30 days. If you make the mistake of tossing that affidavit into your inbox and forgetting about it, 30 days later, you are a slave to me. Under the law, $50 per month of your earnings belongs to me. That's the point of those cryptic notices from your credit card company. These are the new terms of your credit card. The law says that you agree and accept the presented terms unless you respond and refuse to accept. If you respond, you can change those rules all you want. All you have to do is respond. That notice they sent you is not enforcement of their rules. That is an opportunity for you to agree with their rules by remaining silent. Send a notice back saying, you may not charge me any late fees, and I will not pay more than 5% interest on my credit card charges, and those are the terms you must accept if you wish to have me as a credit card customer. If the credit card company does not rebut or cancel your card within your time limit, you are legally entitled to the terms you offer. Your announcements and demands are just as valid as theirs. If your notice is in the form of an affidavit, no judge, court, or officer may deny your claim, and the credit card company may not impose different terms unless you agree to them either by response or by silence. As odd as it seems, it's probably not a good idea to ever sign anything that you did not write yourself. If you write it, it benefits you. If they write it, it benefits them, and it probably costs you in a big way. An affidavit is not a complicated thing. Samples of them are easy to find. There's no particular layout that's required. Basically, it's a sworn statement of true and complete fact with a date and a notarized signature. If it affects another party, it must be presented to that party with a reasonable time for response. Large institutions are very good at sending notices, but they are not very good at reading and responding to notices they receive. That is not your problem. Institutional size and bureaucratic incompetence is not an excuse for anything. Send them the notice and hold them to the terms contained in that notice. If they refuse your terms, change the terms or walk away from the relationship. Just make sure that you always play by your rules, not theirs. That's what the Declaration of Independence is. Our rules, not theirs. Just as tyranny comes in many forms, revolutions come in many forms. We can have a nice, non-violent revolution. We can even do it all through the mail if we borrow a trick that institutions use against us. If this is used more effectively, then nobody will have to use this. But don't do it if you don't know what you're doing. Paper can be dangerous. I'm Jerry Day, and this is Matrix News Network.
My interaction with the family court system has been significantly more traumatic than war. More traumatic than watching my friends die, and more traumatic than having my body destroyed. I had the ability to change the outcome of things in any given situation in war. I could try a little harder, I could fight a little harder, I could motivate myself to hold on one moment longer. In this situation, all I could do was stand by and watch the horror unfold. At our first and only custody hearing, Judge Meacham of Adams County made fun of me for having a restraining order against my abusive ex-partner. Adams County then as a whole went on to ignore her violent pattern of abuse. Furthermore, she and her mother have refused to cooperate with court-ordered visitation instructions, blaming my work schedule for the refusal. Due to this, my contribution to my son's life has been limited to only child support, and he does not even know what I look like. If this were reversed and I were a woman and my ex were a man, she would be sitting in a jail cell facing felony charges for assaulting me and our child.
Alright, so nosotros las familias más unidas. Nosotros las familias más fuertes. Si se puede. Well, with that, we got Captain America came up here. We got Batman in the Capitol. Hey, she said puede. She said puede. Captain, hey, next we got hey, he came dressed for the occasion, man. Hey, you know what I'm saying? Hey, next we got Captain America, aka Jason D'Souza. And I am the Black Panther, y'all.
Dear Abba Father, thank you for everybody over here, and I thank you that you love everybody right over here, our children, and we give you everything we can to get back to our children. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Alright, so the number one reason that dads and parents do not have a relationship with our children is because of child support. It's all about money, Title 40. The family courts come in and they ransom and abduct our children, and unless we pay money and we do what they want, we will never be able to see our children again. I'm a father with no criminal record, and I have a lifetime restraining order to be 100 yards away from my son. And the judge said that my words are a weapon and I post crap on the internet. I was an editor for the California Fathers' Rights Movement. The restraining order that was given to me was all false allegations. It was just the mom's word and what she said. No police reports, no doctor reports ever against me. And I had 2 witnesses proving that she was lying. Anyways, the judge never met him in my life, first time ever meeting him. And he said about a dozen times, I do not care. And that's kind of what I deducted in the family court system. They don't care about anything except for the money, Title 4D, that's what it all comes down to. And my friend, his dad is a lawyer, and he had to go to court, and all the girl said, there was no romantic relationship, no children, but she just said, you know what, I heard a noise late at night at my house and I was afraid. He wanted to represent himself because his dad, he felt like if he said what his dad did, he would have gotten, he felt like it wasn't the truth. But he ended up getting a 1-year restraining order. So these restraining orders come so easily. All you have to do is just say that you're scared and that is it. If there's children involved, you'll never see them again. And I've squandered everything that I have just because I love my son and I just want to be in his life. There's no jury, no chance of appeal, and I have to pay child support that I can't afford for a child I cannot see. And this is the paycheck that I got. It's for $284.62. There was a time I was homeless and living in my car just to be in my child's life, and now I don't even own a car. I'm just on there by the mercy of friends and family. And yesterday I had Zoom court and I just asked the judge, all I want is just 5 seconds just to be able to tell my son that I love him. It's been 3 years. The last day I saw him was on Father's Day and I had all positive monitoring reviews. Can I at least just say, dear son, I love you? And I've just been denied. I'm not even allowed one phone call to let my son know that I love him.
Tell them right now.
Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, son, wherever you're at, I know you're here somewhere in California. I love you with all of my heart, and I'll never give up trying to be in your life. And the reason I dress up as Captain America is because there are a bunch of fathers in England where they had their children taken away by the family courts, and so they would dress up as superheroes. And I just thought, wow, that's inspiring. I want to do that. Like, what kind of craziness has come upon my life that I'm dressing up as Captain America, just wanting to just be in my son's life, just have a little buddy. So, I love you, buddy.
Secretary of the Family Law Section Council of the Illinois State Bar Association, and I happen to also be the co-author of the Illinois State Bar's resolution against this bill. Currently the state of Illinois gets federal funding and grants, and individuals obviously get state aid. There's very real potential for this state to lose federal funding, and I'm talking millions, possibly hundreds of millions of dollars, as well as parents not being eligible for the state aid. This issue has not been addressed by those in favor of this law. And so potentially Illinois loses a lot of money, poor families lose more money, and our state gets less money.
What's in the best interest of the kid is not to worry about how much federal dollars we're going to get for food stamps in this country.
There's already litigation on that issue, isn't there, when there was 50-50
Sure, and I've been speaking with some of the judges in Cook County. They brought up that there's been ungodly amounts of litigation to ensure that the people kept their food stamps, because frankly it's life or death. Without them, they have a big problem.
So let's make sure that we keep our kids out there. Let's keep the fight on so that we can continue to get food stamps. I want my people off of food stamps. Yeah. What do you mean? That's ridiculous to even bring that up.
Let's keep that down in the back, please. We want to stay on the rails.
All I know is that not more than 2 minutes ago, you asked me not to rebut a question, and yet...
I understand that. I'm trying to keep everybody to the same set of rules to the best of my ability.
Here's a story you all might be interested in. Dateline, Las Vegas, Nevada, November 11, 2022. Unnamed sources close to the investigation indicate that a Clark County Family Court Judge, Matthew P. Carter, died on Wednesday, November 9, 2022, having committed suicide with a firearm. Carter was on administrative leave at the time. Our Atomic I team managed to obtain from unofficial sources an unofficial copy of Carter's suicide note, which we below reproduce and transcribe. I will read it for you all. I hear the cries of children at night. I hear their faces grow solemn with alienation. Who draws the line between what's wrong and right? And when I ask what my life's been for, it's all been for nothing. Save your regrets for the dead. Pain is for the living. It hurts so much. The suffering must stop. This I do knowing that, for once, I acted in the best interests of the children. MPH. Mandatory psychiatric evaluations for all family court judges now. And when they demand your psych evaluation, insist they produce an affidavit supported by probable cause. Well, that's one worth hearing. What's happening in our family courts today is absolutely disgusting. Disgusting.
doctrine of natural rights was most prominently laid out by Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence right at the beginning of the document. We hold these truths to be self-evident, he wrote, that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is probably the most famous phrase in the English language. But the words that immediately follow may be the most important. Here's what it says. To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Okay, what is the consent of the governed? Natural rights are inherent to your humanity and the source of your sovereignty as a free individual. If you believe in God as I do and Jefferson did, then you accept the truism that we have been created by him in his image and likeness, and just as he is perfectly free, so are we. If you believe instead that we are the product of natural evolutionary forces and not the intentional recipients of gifts from a loving supreme being, you also recognize that we own our minds and our bodies, and we have the free will to use them as we see fit. Either way, whether you choose theology or biology is the source of our rights. The birth of America in the Declaration of Independence recognized that our rights come from within us. They are not given to us by the government. You have a right to your person, to your property, and to your version of the pursuit of happiness. You also have the right to think as you wish, to say what you think, and to publish what you say. You have the right to use violence to protect yourself from anyone or anything trying to take away your rights. You have the right to privacy, to fairness from the government, the right to travel, to worship or not to worship. You have the right to keep and enjoy your earnings and your property, and you have the right to be left alone. All humans have these rights. But sometimes bad and power-hungry people will try to take these rights away. A thief in the night will use a gun or a crowbar to steal your car. A thief in the government will use the law to steal your income. You get the picture. When the Declaration of Independence talks about government receiving its just powers from the consent of the governed, it is describing the process by which we transfer a portion of our natural rights to the government. The process by which we each give away some of our freedom, some of our individual sovereignty, and thus give to the government its authority to govern. What's important to note about this process is that according to the Declaration of Independence, it is supposed to be voluntary and consensual. That's why government can only wield those powers which the individual is at liberty to wield and to give to the government. Think of it this way. You can't steal a car from your neighbor, and so your friends can't hire an agent to go out and steal from your neighbor either. And thus you and your friends cannot empower the government to do the stealing. Again, I think you get the point. Lawful government only has the powers that we once had and we lawfully gave to the government. Just as slaves have the moral and legal right to leave those enslaving them, just as the states have the moral and legal right to leave a union that violates the Constitution that binds them, so too you have the moral right to live without a government when it breaks its own laws. The federal government claims your consent through the Constitution. The Constitution is a social contract that binds the American people to their government. Did you freely consent to this? I don't know if anybody did. So since none of us consented to the Constitution, either the government stays within the confines of the Constitution, or we can ignore or change the government. This view, called the consent of the governed, was widely and openly accepted by the framers. They gave us a Constitution which defines, limits, and constrains the government. This is why adherence to the Constitution by all government is so crucial to preserving and retaining our freedoms. The Constitution formalizes the relationship between sovereign people and sovereign states and the federal government. When the Constitution is ignored, so is our sovereignty. If we can't avoid a government to which we never gave consent and which violates the Constitutions, so will our freedoms be invaded.
More than 100,000 American children just like these don't have a permanent home. They're waiting for someone to adopt them. Most aren't the babies we normally associate with adoption. Some are older, some have brothers and sisters who want to stay together. Some have a disability, but they all need a family to help them grow up healthy and happy. And they all need a lot of love. For more information, call the National Adoption Center at 1-800-TO-ADOPT. Adoption is easier than you think.
Can you cover up the alleged allegation of your connection with Jeffrey Epstein?
You're fired. But so that's right. We'll fire Hillary. Hillary, you're fired.
40 years they've been trying. You couldn't fire somebody. They were horrible, doing a terrible job for the veterans. Robbing, stealing, hurting people. You couldn't do anything. It's called the Veterans Accountability Act. And now you can say you're fired.
You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. Hillary, you're fired.